Welcome to the Hotel Tech Podcast. This is the show where we tackle your most pressing issues to bring your business more wins. Keeping up with technology is challenging. Our experts are here to help you figure it all out. Here's your hosts, Glenn Hausman and Estella Hale.
Hey everybody, Glenn Hausman here, your co-host for the Hotel Tech Podcast. I'm excited to have everyone here with us today. Got a great show lined up with a great guest. But before I do that, let me introduce my incredible, wonderful, amazing, fantastic co-host, Miss Estella Hale. And she is, of course, the Chief Product Evangelist with SHR, which stands for, as you know, Scepter Hospitality Resources. And she is the most techie of the tech people minds that I know in this business, always keeping me up to date and keeping me, kosher on all of my tech kind of stuff. Estella, how are you today?
I am doing great, but I am not going to take credit for that, Glenn, because I think you keep up quite well. But happy to be here and very excited about today's show.
All right, let me get this straight. Everything I say is completely on a weekend of prayer, just hoping that I'm somewhere, that I can sound like I know what I'm talking about. So I guess I'm doing the right thing. I'm going to keep up the fakery throughout this entire conversation today. But Estella, what I really like to do is I love talking to folks from a lot of the different, suppliers that are out there that are creating all of these fantastic technologies for us. But I also especially love getting to talk to people that are involved in setting rates and understanding distribution at the brand level or the property level, because they're dealing with it every single day, right?
Absolutely. At the end, technology is the means, not the end. So we have to focus on the end. And without having that vision from, the people that set the strategy and the people that are really guiding the hotel business to not only adoption, but to tell us where we need to go and where the pains are, I don't think we could do this.
Right, and that's why today we've got somebody that's dealing with this stuff every single day. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Nayan Peshkar. He's the SVP of Digital Distribution and Revenue Strategy with Millennium Hotels and Resorts, a brand that I'm a fan of as well. Nayan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Glenn, good to be here.
It's good. It's good to be here. It's good to have you here, I should say. It would be weird if I say it's good to be here. But actually, honestly, it is good to be here. But that's more of a statement of living and being part of this universe than being here on the show right now.
And the show.
Yeah, which is also I'm just so blessed that all of us get together and have these kind of great conversations. So Nayan, I think perhaps the best place for us to start off is really tell us a little bit about what your company is, the number of hotels and what you're trying to achieve with your distribution, because I know you got properties on multiple continents. So what are you trying to achieve when it comes to digital distribution and revenue strategy?
Hey, Glenn. Millennium Hotels and Resorts is a global company. We have 140 hotels spread across the globe in all key cities, New York, Boston, LA, Chicago, Singapore, Beijing, London, you name it. We have 10,500 employees across the company, 35,000 rooms. We do in excess of £1 billion in revenue, and we're listed in the London Stock Exchange. It's a fairly global company, and it has global needs, and be that in revenue strategy, distribution, or digital. So really excited to talk to you folks about this today and learn something from you and share with you how we do things.
Great. So I think go on, Estella, please continue.
No, I was going to say, I think that is a great perspective and actually an approach that we take. We learn so much from the guest of the podcast. And I know in your experience, you have touched so many areas, Nayan, not only from distribution and digital marketing, but just setting strategy for a brand that, while global, still has niche markets and needs that may be market specific. So I'd love to maybe start with asking you of a little bit more about that need for strategy across the different settings of independent hotels.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick this off. I mean, think about Millennium Hotels and Resorts. We have multiple brands. They're organized in different collections. They talk to different audiences. And of course, the cultures of the place that we are based at are also different. So if you keep that in mind, having one approach to distribution doesn't really work. And therefore, there's a need for strategy. And that's where folks like me come in. I'm part of the commercial organization that sets the overall commercial strategy for the hotel. A couple of things to keep in mind, right? Or right off the bat is hotel distribution is complex. Is it too complex? I think so. And I think it's too complex from the point of view that it's not right-sized to the kind of hotels that are in the market. So talk about the larger brands, Marriott, Hilton's, Intercontinentals, 5,000 plus hotels, 200-300 distribution channels. Makes sense. They have hotels in obscure markets.
Yeah.
They have hotels that are trying to attract new audiences that have not stayed in hotels before in developing countries. And their distribution needs are different to that of smaller firms, let's say Millennium Hotels and Resorts. I think the complexity of distribution gets challenging when someone like me tries to adopt the same standards as larger brands like Intercontinental. Now, is that a good fit? I think that's the kind of question that we set strategy around. The answer from my side, the solution for Millennium, that in this respect is that it's not a good fit. We need to work with the right kind of partners, have the right kind of strategy. That's a good fit for our model. And our model is not that of a management hotel company, and it's not that of, let's have 4,000 hotels. We are owner-operators of properties, and our main objective is to drive value for our key stakeholders and for ourselves, our team members. And that reflects in our distribution strategy.
That's a great perspective. So, and many times, because I guess on the operation, so many times we're used to looking at our comps and down the street, that it could even be a tendency of, well, yes, let me see what the Intercontinental down the street is doing to try to catch up. And that is something that we should bring to question then.
Talk about the distribution wheel, right? We have this thing called the distribution wheel. I think I saw something in SHR too. We have Millennium today has 50 plus channels that we connect up to and distribute and connect to our audiences. There are 4 or 5 layers in our supply chain that connect the property pricing strategy to the end user. That's too complex for a company that has 140 hotels. And my objective these days is to thin that down. I mean, we can talk about companies like Travelodge or Premier Inn or Citizen M that only have 3 or 4 distribution channels. They do 90% of the revenues from brand.com. They have 10% coming in Hotel Direct and so on and so forth. I mean, that kind of a mix works for them. And that kind of mix works for them because they're able to better manage the communication to their customers. They're better able to manage the costs of acquisition. And therefore, they're better able to manage their profitability. So our goal, I mean, we started our evolution from wanting to compete with larger hotel firms. But we realize now, and more companies like me have realized the same thing, that the fit has to be right. This is a question of right-sizing distribution, not so much a question of choosing whether we want to be in play or not. But we're going to talk about something that will defeat that argument. So keep listening.
So, Nayan, I really want to ask you then, how do you start to put together a strategy when you have so many channels out there and you're trying to get it less complex and get control over it? How do you know which ones to invest your time, effort, and money into, and which ones you should probably take a pass on?
That's a great question, John. I think a good way for hotels to start looking at their business is with the value these channels contribute to their bottom line. And let's start that discussion by looking at what value is in this context. If I look at my P&L, the second largest cost that the business has is the cost of customer acquisition. So the first largest being payroll. So you can see how important the question is, that we manage the cost in a way that the business can look at this in a positive fashion and that it is sustainable for the business in the longer term. So what does that mean, right? Would OTA 1 or OTA number 2, let's call them actually, Booking.com and Expedia, right? Let's call them
Yes.
for what they are. Are they good for our business? And, do we need to work with both of them? I mean, that's a pretty big question, right? Because these are major channels that contribute millions of dollars revenues to us. It's a big question. But if you look at 2019 to 2022, certainly Google is a new player in this market now,
Yes.
but they have the ability to scale up rapidly. We've seen that in the past. So I say that this world is about to be rocked. But besides the point, talk about Booking.com and Expedia. They're both in the same markets. They both have the same value props, pretty much. And they're both trying to be the hotel's partners from a marketing standpoint. Now, that might work for larger hotel firms that, as I said before, have destinations in obscure places. They want to be able to promote these hotels. They're driven by top line. That may not be the same thing for other hotel brands. When we are in gateway cities that are pretty strong in their demand, I'm not expanding 500 hotels a month. If I look at the CAGR for our occupancy percentage over the last 10 years, it would have moved more than 1 or 2%. So therefore, my approach is to find out the good fit of these channels into my overall business mix. And there, we have developed something called a value index. And that value index looks at the cost of compensation, the commission. It looks at and of course, in channels like GDS, the cost of transaction, all of that, cost of customer acquisition. We look at the sustainability of the channel. GDS is a favored channel because it yields high and it is considered to be a direct channel. There's a one-to-one connection between the end booker and us. There's no intermediary there other than the distribution channel there, to which we pay a distribution cost. We look at, is it easy to extract value from the channel from my account management standpoint? Some OTAs are easier to deal with than some others. Some OTAs are partners to the hotel's business. Some hotels work with them more aggressively because of that. Some OTAs work with themselves. I think it's for folks like me to understand what that mix is and then assign values to this grid of ours. We look at this value index and say that, hey, OTA number 1 is great to work with. Their compensation is reasonable. They're helping us in markets that we don't have great exposure for. And it's the kind of business I need. So we give them a higher rating. Some of the OTAs that we look at who don't like brand equity, they market on our keywords, they don't like rate parity. And that becomes a challenging position for us to look at them as favorable partners. Therefore, we don't rate them highly. So these are the ones that we tend not to work with in a, let's say, friendlier fashion. Maybe that's probably the best way to put it.
So, Nayan,
Yes,
is it fair to say that sometimes you have no choice? Excuse me. Sometimes you have no choice but to work with a particular OTA. It's almost a necessary evil as opposed to something you really want to go in, because some OTAs, from what you're telling me, are great partners in the sense that they charge a fair rate for great distribution, but others you may feel compelled to have to be on, even if they're not playing the game the way you like to. Is that true?
That is true to a large extent. And we have to balance the first part of the conversation with an understanding that with those folks that you're not, we are on good terms with everybody, but those folks that don't have a longer term future with Millennium and other brands, we just have to make sure that we don't get too aligned with them. So we don't sink into their distribution quagmire too much. It's good to play, but we also have to keep an eye on the exit sign.
And I think this also helps us understand what I'm seeing more and more, Nayan, is a change in the perspective from a few years ago. because it sounded like hotels needed to be everywhere. And here, for a flat fee, be in 100 channels, be in 200 channels, 300 channels for $4.99. And that type of way of thinking has shifted, because at the end, there is a cost in managing those number of channels. And like you said, if you're going to pay attention to who is bidding on my terms, who is doing some of the things that might not be aligning with other efforts that I have, really having hundreds of channels might not be the right answer. So I think going even one step back and looking into what I'm seeing from hoteliers, into, really thinking through a little bit more in those channels that they want to participate on. And then how about markets? Also looking into the markets they want to participate on.
Yeah. It's a great question. So if you think about new markets, right? There are two kinds of ways of looking at a market: new markets and existing markets. Do we focus on expansion, or do we focus on consolidation? I think the approach in the past has been that let's be everywhere, be always on, work with everybody in the same terms, and so on and so forth. I think that point of view is changing. I can talk about the Millennium context. Maybe when we started the company, all of the intellectual input that we had in the organization came from larger firms. And maybe the folks that worked in my job in the past decided that, hey, I want to replicate in Millennium the same things I knew in company X, a larger firm. Obviously, what we know now is that may not have been the right choice, because we don't have 4,000 hotels. We don't want to have 4,000 hotels. So therefore, because we own our buildings, the properties and assets. So I think right sizing has become a big part of conversation here. And if you look at markets, the same thing. Do we want to be in new markets? Do we want to be consolidating in our existing markets? There's a balance there. We want to expand to the new markets that are aligned with us. So talk about China.
Yeah.
We were discussing, you and me were discussing with a distribution partner in China recently about how Millennium can pitch its products in that market. Those of you who follow my LinkedIn feed would have seen that we did a pretty big deal with Trip recently. And I see them as a friendly partner, the new face of the OTAs, as is evident in some other relationships like Make My Trip 2 out of India. I think these markets are closely aligned with what drives Millennium. We're a friendly company that offers great rooms, great locations, and we pride ourselves on our service. We also have great value. We also give great value to our end users. I think these markets appreciate where we are and how we are pitched, and we are aligned with those players who help us push our message out to these markets. Now, does that mean that I'll exclusively distribute through Trip ad nauseam? Maybe not, right? I think it's a good mix of working with them till I get my, till I get settled in, till I understand those markets. What has not happened with Expedia, if you look at New York, 40% of the revenue for New York comes from one channel. How is that good for the market? How is that good for the industry? And that's the scale of the issue. What we should not do in the future with these new entrants, be that Google even, is let ourselves come to that point. I think new markets and exploring new markets is great, but we need to be conscious that at some point we have to swim on our own, merits. I think the discussion on new markets and old markets is quite an important one to have. I say that consolidate your presence in your existing markets, your home markets, if you're a regional player especially. Focus on getting your brand out in new markets, with the objective also that in the future, you would do it on your own steam.
I couldn't agree more. So when you're considering those partnerships, it's not just about commission level. There are multiple things at play, and looking into the partners and technology that enables the execution of that distribution strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. We were discussing on a different forum, slightly different context, but I think it's relevant to this equation, right? Now, everything we've discussed till now is okay, but it's also not okay. As in, it might all be wrong. I'll explain why. You know, companies like SHR are getting a lot of innovation into the space, into the distribution space, into the revenue strategy space. I know that, I don't know, can I speak about this?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you have a strong focus on ML and AI in your entire suite of products.
That stands for machine learning and artificial intelligence for folks that are
That's right.
may not know.
Machine learning and artificial intelligence. SHR has a huge focus on these things in its entire product suite. Now that defeats my original argument saying that, hey, if you want to look at distribution, conserve your resources, focus on the battles you can win, have a long-term plan for the battles you're not capable of winning right now, and rationalize. Of course, when that argument is no longer valid when you put in machine learning and AI focus into your distribution, because now you suddenly automated 90% of your tasks. Right? You've gotten intelligence into the distribution framework. You're letting algorithms drive some of your strategy, and my responsibilities will shift from execution to simply planning. That gives me a lot of space and gives me a lot of time to focus on the right things, the things I want to be focused on. So I'd say that, Estella, maybe you could share a little bit more with me and everybody else listening to this podcast, certainly with Glenn, on what you're doing to make my life easier.
This is great. Before you go, Estella, I do love how he's turning the tables on you and making you answer a question. But we're going to make everybody stick around because Estella is going to get this answer out right after this commercial break. So stay tuned for more of the Hotel Tech Podcast. The Sendine Hospitality Cloud is an integrated technology platform driving marketing and sales performance in more than 30,000 hotels around the globe. The award-winning CRM suite integrates with hundreds of technology platforms to capture intent, preferences, past behavior, and satisfaction for every guest. Learn more at Sendine.com. That's CENDYN.com. All right, and we are back, and we went to commercial break just as Estella was being interviewed on here.
Being interviewed.
I hope you had time to think of a great answer, Estella, because the pressure's on. Let's hear what you have to say.
I do. Actually, no, I love this because this is really our passion and what has driven us for 2 decades now, and we're very excited on what is to come. And I think one of the things is being able to allow room for these strategy minds of the hospitality industry to ask the what ifs and the what's next. If we are able to, with machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science, the rest are tools, with data science, be able to provide the tools of a lot of the execution of strategy that they have honed in and know that is something that they're manually doing today, we are opening the room for those minds to think of the what ifs. So from the one side, knowing that we need to break certain paradigms that have existed for a very long time, such as how we serve information to guests, knowing that the 20-year-old widget of putting the burden on the guest on give me your dates, give me your occupancy, give me your preferred rate, but instead learning stuff from that past and bringing what that guest should know of value of the property is, one of the things we want to tackle. Another one is content. We cannot allow our properties to continue with the copy paste of content in every channel. But also there's a burden there in operationally and being able to cater to once you have the strategy of the channels and the markets that you want to reach, how can technology enable you to cater, for example, the content to that market via that channel instead of just doing everything in the same, let's say, for example, hotel description for everything else. So that's one of the things that we want to tackle and really bring that intersection of the decision making of rates, value, presentation of information, where the decision making happens, which is the user interface for the guest.
Let me tell you how this makes sense to me as a hotelier, right? And this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's a large hotel firm or a small hotel firm, because this part of distribution innovation that's coming out of the industry now on the technology side is equally applicable to all. So simple things, operational efficiencies, rate loading, is a big bugbear, right? It is a resource-intensive task that is absolutely essential for me to be able to get a booking, connects me to the end user. Stuff like that gets automated because there's enough patterning of rate loading already available. We can build that into some sort of an automation, and that is an easy win. Talk about translations and localizations. We tend not to get into translation and localization because it's expensive and it's also time consuming. It's a complicated workflow. Deploying AI, understanding which markets need what part of the content, because not everybody is searching for every single thing on your website, on the fly will be a great help. We have to talk about this. The biggest impact that we'll see in the next couple of years, certainly from this innovation coming out, is the inclusion of voice.
Yes,
search
definitely.
Inclusion of voice into distribution. My kids, well, the elder kid at least, he's 10 years old. He does not do his homework using Google search anymore. He asks Google Home his questions.
Wow.
What's the meaning of the last question I asked before I flew off?
Well,
saying that
that's amazing.
The world is changing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Nayan, I will say my kids and your kid have a lot in common, at least with the first half of your sentence, the part where they don't do homework. After that part, that's kind of where we separate on it. So things are changing. Things are rapidly adapting, and you have to adapt too. And Nayan, I can't help but wonder, how do you craft a strategy for something like New York City, Rome, Tokyo, for some of the more unusual places that you might be, such as, Iraq or all the way up in Anchorage, Alaska, for example. I would think you can't just have a one-size-fits approach with the same type of distribution that you would for your overall brand when you're talking about some of these different individual properties, right?
Absolutely. And this also changes by the brand vector. We have a lifestyle brand called N-Social. We have a mainstream business brand called Millennium. We have a leisure-focused brand called Copthon. And, the distribution strategy, the revenue strategy for each of these brands is very specific. Some brands deliver value. Some brands deliver experience. And the products that we have, how the content is created, how the content is communicated, how we position and pitch ourselves, all of it changes. Certain brands, value is not what we are looking for. Price is not our talking point. The experience is. And that gets structured into how we set up the rates that our customers see, how they package with experiences. They're not about just a room only, for example. There's a new program that we have in Europe called Culture Vulture. And this is exposing the European arts culture to folks that want to visit our hotels in Europe. If you're traveling all the way from the US to Europe, London specifically is a culture hub. You want to see what's happening in our vicinity of the hotels, right? You want to go to West End shows, you want to go and see concerts, you want to go and see museums, you want to go and experience the localness of London. So this program, Culture Vulture, helps our consumers do that. So we take a very brand-led approach to how we position our products, and the distribution is shaped in that way. For newer brands like N-Social, we're very, very digitally focused. One of the things I do in the company is look at the tech and the marketing stack of digital. Our brand is digital first. Our loyalty program is digital first. And we just launched a new digital first small and medium business program called Millennium for Business. And that's a clear message from Millennium to our audience that we are good at adapting to how and what the market requires of hotels. The days of burning shoe leather, beating the streets with 100 salespeople, they're long gone, Glenn. I think the world has moved on.
Right.
It's entirely digital. Those brands that are not adapting and not innovating, they are not going to last around for too long. We fully intend to be here for the next 100 years, and we have a good, good ecosystem of partners like SHR, and we have a good ecosystem of partners who are innovating in their own space. We're collaborating with them to get a good fit for our consumers. Our consumers will stay aligned with our approach because we are learning from them. We're asking them, what do you want? How do you want to buy stuff from us? How do you want this to be pitched to you? And we are working with SHR and other partners to help them create products that we can then use to connect with this consumer.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a fascinating approach. As I said, I've been a fan of the brand for a while. Y'all were in Times Square before Times Square was the place of safety and security it is now. I remember you staked out your claim early there. So where does all of this go, in your opinion, in the future? I think the question really is, how do you make sure that you're continually up to date with the right strategies at all times because of all of these factors that you were mentioning and the quick changing nature of the responsibilities for your job?
True. So if you were to meet and you ask me, hey, can you tell me what you do in a line? I'd say that I'm in the business of acquisition, engagement, and retention of customers. That's what I do. So if I take that and put that into context, right, of what the future holds, talk technology. Estella mentioned earlier, is technology an enabler or end all? We think it's definitely an enabler. It's not the end all. We're not looking to SHR to distribute our rooms. We are holding the strategy, but we're working with partners to then use their distribution framework to get our message out. And the same with OTAs. We're talking to some new entrants in the market. All of it is exactly the same. We're also realigning to what should we be focused on in the future, right? What makes a business sustainable? Through the financial crisis of 2007 and 8, a lot of hotel firms focused on the bottom line. CFOs became CEOs, and the life of the business got taken out. At least that's my view of it. I think the industry is realigning now. The industry is realigning to understand that our consumers want innovation, they want creativity, they want to feel something when they stay in our hotels. It needs to be more than a room, and the marketing message needs to excite them. They should want to be with us. There's enough choice in the market, right? So I think that the marketing folks are starting to come back to the fore. People like me are defining what the new norm looks like and what the new conversations that happen at management boards look like. And the one thing I'm really happy about is that the consumer is back in the center of this mix. I think somewhere in the last few years, he slipped off the top table. He's back, and he or she is back. And, the consumer is driving our focus, is driving our strategy. Glenn, I think, it's the old new, but still I'm happy with that.
Wow, that's really, really fascinating. So, Nayan, I really feel like you've pulled it all together for us, but I do want to make sure that there's nothing else that you want to chat about. Any other bits of wisdom you could share with our listeners right now?
Well, I'd say, Glenn, that 5 things for us to consider, right? If I was to sum up this discussion, also just something to share from my learnings at Millennium Hotels and Resorts is I want my fellow hoteliers to think about complexity of distribution, whether what they see in the distribution mix is right size for the company or not. I want them to understand that scale doesn't matter to distribution when there are companies out in the market that are innovating their products on the basis of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Large, small, medium-sized companies, everybody will have the same playing field. So keep an eye on that. I want us to also recognize that we should always be focused on new markets or just focus on our home markets. There's a good mix out there. Focus on consolidation in your home markets, but also try and get a leg into the new markets with the long-term focus that you will make them your new home markets. I also want us to recognize that bottom line is not the place to start, right? We need to focus on our consumers, focus on top line that delivers value to the bottom line. Don't start on the bottom line. And last but not the least, certainly technology is not the end all. Having the best and the smartest and the shiniest system isn't going to make money. We still need strategy to help extract value from technology. That's not something to ignore.
Absolutely. And Nayan, I'm also going to tie it back to the last thing you said about the old being the new, and just to also thinking from that technology aspect and from the connecting to your guest, exactly that. Look at connecting to your guest, not connecting to channels. The channels will be the tool, but for that purpose to be the connection of the hotel with the guest, with the old being new again.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Hey, Estella, any final thoughts before we bring this bad boy home?
No, that was it. That was my final thought.
No, it was a good one. It was a good one. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have anything else to say. All right. So in summarizing this conversation, wow, I think we learned a lot today, and I'd love for you to follow up with the conversation, all of you listeners out there. Drop us your thoughts and ideas. You could, of course, find all of the past shows and the current one on SHR's website. That's SHR Global. And, of course, on the No Vacancy News Network, which you can find at novacancynews.com. You can find me at Traveling Glenn, and SHR on social media at SHR_global. Also sign up for our weekly newsletter. Simply text the word hotel to 66866 and you'll get that. But final thoughts today is we are going to high tech. I'm not exactly sure how we're gonna do everything yet, but Estella, I'm super excited for you and I to be at high tech, and we're going to be doing some great recording there. And I'd love to the fan community to come out and say hello to us while we're there.
Yes, that would be great. So we're going to be really amongst all of the industry leaders and the technologists of our industry. So if anyone has ideas of what they'd like us to discuss on the show at High Tech, we're always open to those. Thank you again. And thank you so much, Nayan, for being our guest. We really appreciate you giving us the time and sharing your knowledge with all of the hoteliers that listen to the show.
Yes, Nayan, thank you so much for being here. You are an absolutely awesome guest and hope to have you back sometime.
Great chat. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thanks to all of you for listening, and we'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks of the Hotel Tech Podcast. Thanks for listening.